This is a pre-race breakdown, general pre-race information, all the stuff that you should know or at least look out for in preparation for your half Ironman. Okay, a couple of things to note. Some races will be on Saturdays or Sundays, so a lot of this information will differ. This is simply a gauge to help you get the information flowing or help you think of some of the right questions to ask on race day. So about 3 weeks before, you need to be starting to actively simulate some of those race day conditions, testing your gear, testing your nutrition, looking into getting a bike tune-up if need be, simulating some of those pre-race or simulating some of those race day conditions. Is it going to be hot, cold? Do you need to stop using a fan inside? Simulate a humid environment. All that stuff should be actively thought about and prepared for on race day. You should create a packing list at this point and order items that you need or need replaced. This is typical for race day nutrition. Typically, athletes postpone this until the event week, and it makes for a stressful week wondering if it's going to arrive or not. Typically, it runs out on race week for whatever reason, so plan ahead. You need to figure out the typical temperature range for your race. Find out the conditions, simulate them during your key sessions. This is going to be very, very beneficial, especially later on when you do start to target some of your endurance sessions or race-specific miles, so you can figure out what works and what doesn't out on race day. What does the temperature at your race venue do throughout the day? Does it increase? Does it pretty much stay the same? Look back over the last couple of months or the last couple of years in your race month to determine what it typically does on race day. Some races, it's not uncommon for a 30 or 40 temperature swing by about noon, so make sure that you have identified if that is your course and actively prepare for that as best possible. Heat acclimation, you want to shoot for similar sweat rates during some of those key sessions. Also, hydration, fueling, and race intensity are also going to be important factors. Race week, stay off your feet, stay hydrated. Watch out for purely fueling or hydrating with a sports drink. You don't want to do that. Ideally, at this point, you have already established how much nutrition or hydration you need throughout the day, and this is purely a top off. This is not a double it method, right? You just want to top it off and start to actively fit a lot of those other resources you don't normally get into your reservoirs. Okay, if you're the kind of person that actively cramps up at races no matter what you do, you might want to look into a magnesium supplement. But again, these are all things that you should have pretty much ironed out before you arrive on race week. Get tons of sleep. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but having the ability to get more sleep will pay major dividends, especially later on in the week. If you can bank some of that sleep, it will help if you don't sleep the night before your race because of nerves or whatever. You want to eat pretty normally. If you are going to do a carbohydrate load, this will help. Again, I'm not a registered dietitian, so if you want specifics on how to kind of do some of these strategies, highly encourage you to reach out to a professional who does this for a living. This is just what I've done through my own experiences. But you want to do things like a fat load. If you're having a Saturday race, that fat load is going to come on Monday, and that will help you absorb some of that carbohydrate intake that you have later in the week for your carbohydrate loads. You don't have to do this. This is just something that will help a little bit. When you do have your fats, think like a turkey burger, sweet potato fries, not ice cream, healthy fats. Make sure you're charging your batteries and every device that you have on race week. Also, check-in. This might be a little different for you if you are on a local try. Typically, those check-ins happen race morning or the day before, and there is no bike check-in, but make sure you read your athlete guide if you are doing a local try or if you're doing a bigger race like we're talking about here. Days before, there will be bike check-in. There will be actual check-in as well, and you need to figure out when that is. My rule of thumb is to do it as early as possible. Just check in, get it over with. It eliminates some of your checklist, and it just allows you to move on to the next thing a lot easier. Typically what you'll find is the blue and red gear bags. That blue bag is going to be the bike bag. Run bag here is typically for the run. The morning clothes bag, gray, black, or white, just depends on the races. Typically, some of these colors might change, but for the most part, they will stay the same. Personal needs, you may or may not have those at your race. So again, make sure you check what you get in your bag, okay? You want to double check everything, so if they list 7 or 8 items that you should have in your packet, make sure you check your packet for those 7 or 8 items. It is not uncommon for a volunteer to miss putting something in your packet. So again, check it right there at check-in just to be sure that you have everything you need before you leave. Also, timing chip. This is becoming a little bit variable at race sites. Some races give you your timing chip when you do check in for the race. Others do it at a different time. There has also been some races where you have to wear your timing chip to check your bicycle into transition area. And if that is the case at your race venue, then make sure you know what's going on. Ask about the timing chip when you check in, just so you know what's happening and then plan for it. Days leading up your event could have a fun run, an endurance run, a underpants run, whatever you want to call it. You know, if you're there for performance, I would suggest staying away from it unless you're a very disciplined athlete and you're not going to chase the rabbit at one of these things. You know, a lot of times people will go out and put the stamp on it and win the endurance or the fun run or the swim or whatever. They'll win it and totally ruin their race in the process. They will do this at a super threshold pace, and it won't totally ruin your race, but it will make it a lot harder than it needs to be, because the whole point of this week is to kind of top off your reserves and pretty much everything, so you have them to race with. So stay away from them, or if you do it, just be smart about how you're doing them. Race briefings, you need to figure out where they are Thursday, Friday, or Saturday if you have a Sunday race, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday if you have a Saturday race. Where are they? When are they? Are they online? I would suggest what's really popular is combining some of your to-dos. For instance, if you wanted to check in and you know that you want to attend the race briefing at 2, I would suggest checking in at 1 o'clock, so that way you can head over to the race briefing, be ready for it right away, and you can check off 2 things at the same time. This is going to be the place where they communicate to you some of the critical race information, sharp turns, steep descents, that kind of stuff, and any last-minute changes that the race organizers will make. Sometimes they do that out of your safety, or say if a road is flooded, they will change the course a little bit differently. So just keep that in the back of your head. Lead-up days, Bike Tech support. Figure out where Bike Tech support is. Even if you don't use it, knowing where it is will, again, it will allow you just to go there if something bad does happen. And typically things do happen out on race week. If you go down, get a flat tire, you don't have any extra spares, you can bring it to the Bike Tech support area. Okay. Official swim access on your swim course. Some races will allow you, some races will not. It's important to know if you are allowed or not. And again, if you do check in early, you can ask this question there. That should be a hub for all of your major questions. Some races you can get DQ'd for swimming in the swim venues before the race starts. At others, they will allow you to swim, but there will not be a lifeguard or any emergency personnel there. So swim with a buddy, or swim and make sure you relay some important information to your support crew, like start time, when you plan to get out, that kind of stuff, and message them when you do. Otherwise, have those people alert the emergency people. 2 days before your race, I call this moving day. You're going to want to get everything situated. And again, if you can do this 3 days before, great, awesome, right? Get all your food, equipment, gear, expo visit, swag area, reservations set up for food if you do that. I love to do my food at wherever I'm staying if possible. Again, it just eliminates another stressful situation for reservations, long wait times, and time on your feet. And so if you can do that or want to do that, that's a big pro tip that I always utilized, or do as much as possible on the days leading up to the race. 2 days before is the most important night for your sleep, right? You want to get some sleep the night before, but I know that nerves will be getting you. So 2 nights before, that's the important night for sleep. And nothing should be a question after today. You should have everything laid out, a schedule for the next 48 hours, and everything should be pretty stress-free. You should just be going down the checklist from here on out. Day before, bike and bike bag, run bag, all of those check in. Where are they and when? Usually they're around the transition area. This is an example for a Saturday race, Friday 7 to 5, and they have a scheduled time system. Some races do, some races just tell you to show up. So again, utilize the emails that they're sending you and ask the question at check-in. I hope you're picking up on this point. Are there shuttles at your place? In your bike bag, you're going to need to put your helmet, your shoes, all of that good stuff for the run. Same thing, but everything you need for the run. So you get off the bike, utilize that run bag, and that's going to have everything in there. Something big is to make sure that you do have access to those bags on race day. If you do not, then you're going to have to plan for that accordingly. Some races do not have bike bags or run bags, any bag. You just show up, lay your stuff out, and go for it, right? So again, make sure you ask that question when you do go to the check-in area so you can see how you're going to set up your transition area. If it's just like a local try, great. Shuttles, again, make sure that you are aware of the shuttles. If you want to utilize the shuttles, they typically operate around the transition times, right, on race morning. Days leading up to it, they're usually pretty good, and again, it usually coincides with the race venue's expo, okay? Day before, you want to have a big breakfast. This is the kind of the Ironman go-to for stuff like this, and again, remember, I'm not an RD. This just has worked well for me, so if you want specifics, talk to an RD. Typically, you want to have this big breakfast before or right around the time that you plan to race the next day. You usually want to be done with it not too much later than the next day. Things like a large stack of pancakes, eggs, hash browns, limit the fat, bacon, that's an example, and the caffeine, like coffee, you want to limit that usually for at least a day before your race as best as possible. If you can't survive without it, then just scale it back a bit. Breakfast, you should be leaving this meal pretty full, but not stuffed like a Thanksgiving meal. That is more Ironman, so back it down a little bit more. And you should be leaving this pretty happy and full. Again, you're going to want to taper the remaining meals throughout the day. You are not going to want to skip lunch. I know it's going to be weird, but the meal sizes are going to be shrinking throughout the day here, ideally. And again, you're going to be limiting things like vegetables and fat, like mayonnaise, stuff like that. You're going to want to snack on salty things. Make sure you do not forget to hydrate. But again, I would think about the amount that you do hydrate with over the course of a normal day, right? And then I would increase it just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. And you can also supplement that with some of the performance sports drinks with there, but don't fuel or hydrate with that exclusively, Also after breakfast, and once I take care of all the to-dos of that day, like check-in and that kind of stuff, what I like to do is set out my morning bag and get everything ready right then and there because I'm in race mode. After I get everything ready, I throw the bag off to the side, and then it's done, right? I don't think about it again until race morning, okay? And then when I wake up on race morning, it's already there. I'm ready to go, and I just do my nutrition, and off I go. Race morning, something you can eat. Again, this is the Ironman level of food, and so about 3.5 hours before your race, this is where you eat a lot of applesauce for a 165-pound male. The typical Ironman applesauce protocol is 3 to 3.5 cups of applesauce. So again, I would scale this back. Okay, I would allow you to eat a little bit earlier. Okay, but also think about the intensity. This is going to be a lot more intense than an Ironman, a lot faster too. So this is where you should be going through some of those pre-race protocols weeks ahead of time and already have this nailed down. This should not be a let's try it out on race morning thing. By race morning, you should already know if it works or not and some of the modifications that you need to make to this system. Personal needs bag. Where are you going to drop it off? At this race, they dropped it off at a museum next to the swim entry. But for you, where are they going to be doing that? Are there personal needs bags at all for your race? Probably not. Shuttles to and from T1. If you're riding a shuttle or plan to utilize the shuttle system, when do they start? When do you plan to get to the shuttle service? And so on and so on. When does your T1 open? It's usually around 4:30. But again, it's highly variable based on the certain event. Okay. You want to allow extra time to pass through T1 and the security checks, and it's going to be colder in the morning, so plan to be wearing probably an additional set of clothes or some warm-up, something to just keep you warm. Okay. Where are you going to dispose of these in your morning clothes bag before the swim start? Is it located right next to swim start, or is the morning clothes bag located a short walk away, kind of near transition? You know, if that's the case, that's going to highly influence the way that you keep warm or have a warm-up later on. Speaking of that, is a swim warm-up available at your race? You need to figure this out, and also, just because it is available doesn't mean you have to utilize it, right? Fairly common for a lot of venues to allow a swim warm-up, but then you have a 20-minute wait after you're done warming up. And if it's chilly at all on race morning, I don't know how much I can encourage this. Also, if you're sitting in a wetsuit for 20 minutes and you decide to take it off, putting it back on is going to be a nightmare. So again, just think about the stress related to that. If it's 5 to 10 minutes before you start, fine. That's fine. Cutoff times, make sure you look at the athlete guide for that. They will list them in there. Bike course aid stations are typically every 12 to 15 miles apart. They will have some of these offerings over there. Personal needs, if your course does it, is halfway, but typically it will not. Last thing on the bike nutrition, don't just blindly take it without knowing how it stacks up against the nutrition that you've been fueling with and the strategy that you're employing. You know, it's okay to use the stuff that's on course, but just know how it's going to impact your race. Common penalties. These are a list of some of the common penalties that are in the Ironman circuit. USAT rules are a little different. For instance, the bike drafting length is about half it is in Ironman. Ironman at 6, and USAT, I believe it's 3 right now. But either way, if you do receive a penalty, make sure you're stopping at the penalty tent, serving your violation before going on. If you miss that penalty tent, you will be DQ'd automatically. Okay, so know where that area is, and if you get a penalty after the penalty tent, then you're probably going to serve it in that transition area. Run course aid stations are usually about a mile-ish apart, maybe a little bit more in some situations, but they try to do a good job of that. Power walking through the aid stations is a great strategy to allow you to intake your nutrition, hydration, and allow your body to absorb that while also getting a little bit of a break. A useful strategy is a shot block every 2 minutes and a gel every 4 or so miles. Again, that is highly, highly variable. So again, practice what you're doing in training, in your key sessions, so by the time the race comes, you know what you're doing. They will usually have these offerings out on course or a variety of them. Again, keep in mind some of the gels that are on course might not stack up as well to some of the ones you are using in your training. So again, just be aware of what you will need extra out on race day. And that is a very brief breakdown of a half lead-up pre-race information. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. My contact is up on the screen, and if you do have a specific video, it should pop up in here soon.